Governor, the Tax Foundation came out with its study, I think yesterday, comparing all the states in terms of business climate and taxes, and I think they ranked Ohio 39th best.
When was the study done, Bill?
Well, it was as of July 1st.
Yeah, so it was probably before we did all this. In other words, they probably had a big chunk of what happened in 2010 before we took over.
Well, I guess, for instance, the estate tax probably wouldn't figure in.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe the lowering the income tax, or maybe anything, you know. And when you start looking at this, you know, we have to make sure that we're looking at data that reflects since we've been there. Now, if we come in and we're not in a good position, then it gives us good reason to go and do more. But I'm not going to comment on some study that, I mean, this was the problem. We were not competitive. So
what I wanted to ask you was, you've been talking, I think, for many months about the prospect of lowering taxes still more, especially the income tax, I guess, personal income tax. Do the numbers keep coming in every month that, you know, we haven't hit a big hole in terms of revenues? Does it look like in this calendar year you will be pushing for a specific additional cut in the income tax? Well, look, we're
looking at a lot of different energy issues and options. But look, I think what I want really to communicate is, and there apparently were some very good public statements from the business community in this state, which if you talk to them, they're pretty upbeat about what we've done and where we're going. We did so much in that first year that I think it's extremely difficult, including for the press, to internalize it. I mean, I think it's been difficult for all of you to really dig in and understand Jobs Ohio. I think it's been difficult. I mean, I've seen very few stories about the way in which we did sentencing reform, prison reform. I've seen very little that has been commented on about the privatization of at least one prison and privatization of operations. I mean, these are very complicated issues. You know, I've seen very little on all the Medicaid reforms we're making. The fact that we're now aligning our Medicaid system with an operation out in California that is involved in payment reform. I've seen very little written about how we were able to do things with in terms of getting mom and dad to be able to stay in their own home rather than to be put in nursing home. I've seen very little written about integrating mental health and physical health and what that means. I've seen very little written about how we can take 5 or 6% of the Medicaid population and put them in a position of where we can manage their health care better. All these things have to be internalized. I've seen very little written about what's happened with our credit improvement. I mean, when you stop for a second and think that Italy, Spain, France, the United States gets downgraded and we get improved, I've not seen much about that. I've seen a lot of stories about using the state plane and things like that, but I haven't seen the in-depth stories about all this policy we've done, including not much written about Invest Ohio. So, Bill, we now have laid a foundation in the state. And the foundation is we kept our word on the income tax, we killed the death tax. Invest Ohio is still very confusing to people. Frankly, it's too complicated right now. But all these things we're doing, the regulatory reform, the Jobs Ohio, gotta let them take, you know, gotta let them work for a while so people know what we've done and they can see the results. Now, as I speak to people around the state, I mean, you look over in Mahoning Valley and the unemployment's gone from 11.5 to 8.3. You're beginning to see people feel better about things. And just keep it going. And in terms of you know, what we want to do with the income tax, it's a big problem. You know, it is a big issue, and because a lot of states that are the fastest growing don't have one. And what I would like to see is, as the revenue grows in the state, we can give it back to people in terms of lowering the tax take and, you know, keeping an eye on those who are at the, you know, those in the middle class and how we can help them. When we do lower taxes, it's important to figure out, I mean, how you look at these distribution tables. But right now, I think we're in a pretty good spot from the standpoint of building on what we've done. And I would encourage all of you to go back and take a look at all these issues I mentioned, plus many more. Construction reform. I don't think I've seen a story written about the fact that multiple prime contracts are now gone. Something that existed for 124 years, and now we have single prime, and Gordon Gee says is going to save them 25% to build his hospital up here. I mean, those are important stories, I think. And so let's get those things out. So, because when I tell people about these things, they say, well, I didn't know that. They know a lot of other things, but they don't know about this. And I think it's important for people to know about these things. And any of you that ever want to sit down in some of our smaller towns and cover the whole range of what we've done and talk about it in detail, we would be delighted to come and see you. Yes, sir.
Brent Kite again, Governor, from Athens. Down in my neck of the woods, there are a lot of people who are concerned about fracking.